Happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday, or not so happy Tuesday. We got the portal open yesterday. We got some heartbreaking news. We're here to talk about it. I'm with my man, Tim Prangley. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's kind of exciting, you guys. This is kind of like Portal Palooza time. You know, it's going to take and then it's going to give. And we're doing a lot of giving right now
I
at
want to say
USC.
that, Tim. I want to say that. I have some numbers for you to make people calm down. So I looked, and there are currently 3,312 players in the portal right now, right? And then when you break that down into math, it's not a crazy number, but that's 17% of NCAA Division I football players in the portal right now. So I'm a talk people off the bridge today. So before we jump in, let's talk about guys that entered the portal. Sam Green entered the portal this past weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Joyner entered the portal, and then we had Deuce Robertson enter the portal, right? So Deuce hurts, Quentin Joyner hurt, Sam Green was a question mark. But you got to start asking yourself, is it the program, or is it does the NCAA need to put a control on this thing, right? I will say it's an NCAA issue. The only thing is it just hit home for us. The past week, it's been an issue in Georgia. They had a starter enter the portal. They have multiple starters into the portal in Georgia, and they're getting the first round bye. You know what I mean? Like It's been an issue in Oregon. It's an issue Texas A&M. It's an issue at Florida. It's an issue everywhere. It's an overall issue. The problem is if the virus finally got to us, and now we're feeling it and it's close to home. I wouldn't say so much that it is a USC issue. I would say so much that it's an NCAA issue. What do you got on that, Tim?
Yeah, it's going to hit everybody, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of college football. Now the portal's not new. Processing players out's not new. Unhappy players with playing time's not new. What's new is people wanting to get paid, and that is something that's not new, but it's new to college football. And I think this is probably something we're going to see happening more and more often.
Yeah, and let's talk about it. I'm gonna drop the link in here for you guys if you guys want to jump in on the show, and we'll answer questions. Sam Green was surprising to me because it was his spot to lose and it was promising, right? And I wasn't really worried about the youngsters up front. So when that happened, the first thing I thought was it had to be the money, right? And the first thing people will reach and say is, well, our NIL isn't strong enough. Our NIL isn't strong enough. At the end of the day, are we going to cash out? Are we going to cash out on an unproven player at this point in time? Right? The old saying, rich people stay rich because they're wise with their money. So do we make the same Bear Alexander mistake on Sam Green? Do we cash him out and make him pay him a lot of money and then nothing comes from it? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of risk in this. There's a lot of risk in this NIL thing. So it was surprising to me wherever he goes. I wish all these kids nothing but the best, right? And so wherever he goes, I wish him the best. But it's just so surprising to me that teams are willing to take a risk on unproven players to think they make their roster better. It turns into the coach's issue of I could fix it. All coaches have the problem. Even I have the problem. I could fix it. I could fix it. I could fix it. You know what I mean? I could fix them. I could get them right. And all coaches think that. So, yeah, that's how I feel about Sam Green. What are your thoughts on Sam Green?
I like the way he came on at the end of the game. He's a bit undersized, right, for that rush end position, but he's a strong young man. He got that sack against, was it Rutgers? It seemed okay against the run, to be honest with you, Coach. But at this point, with all the young guys coming in as well, with the new bumper crop of guys right behind them coming in, I'm not surprised that guys want more reps, and I think that's what you're seeing. You have a Deuce Robinson who has a really high ceiling. I don't think he's come close to what he can be in college football, and he wants to get the ball more often. And it just seems like you just don't get a lot of targets in Lincoln Riley's system. He certainly did for the last year or so. And so part of this is the NIL game, but in order to get that big NIL, you need to get on the field. And so I think that these guys are kind of seeing that, and they want to get on it. They want to get with it. So I'm excited. I'm happy for them. Again, Deuce Robbins is one of the nicer guys, always accessible, after practice and after games. So I wish him the absolute best. But at the end of the day, USC is going to be fine. This just opens the door. There's some young guys coming. Corey Sims, 6'4", 6'3". I'm not sure how tall he is, and he plays a lot bigger than he actually is. So I think it's going to be a chance for a lot of the guys coming in to step up. They're going to need to step up.
Yeah, Deuce leaving was a surprise, right? And they kind of had me fooled because they were all like, we're a room and we support each other and this and that. And they fooled the media, and they did a really good job at it. Deuce leaving is a really, really big surprise because Deuce was a starter and Deuce played. You know what I mean? And I don't think always changing your situation makes you a better player. You know what I mean? And it works for some people. And we've seen it. Sam Darnold's a good example. If you go to the NFL, being in a new place, change your situation. But I don't think changing your situation makes you a good player. Let's like, if we really break down Deuce missed spring ball for baseball season. You know what I mean? Deuce didn't have a full spring ball. So those are the things that kind of you got to keep in mind. Can he go play baseball at his next school? Those are the questions you have to ask. He was great for the Trojans, and we saw him that he had a bunch of upside, but I mean, I don't think changing your situation and missing spring ball at a new school is going to make you a better player. It's just kind of weird to me on that one.
Well, Logan Dow and a couple of people in the chat are talking about sort of he's in the portal, which he can come. We like to grab guys from UCLA the last couple of years, so he's in the portal right now. He showed us. I mean, that catch radius he was showing in that game against USC, he showed what he could do, and they're bringing up a good point. What is he? 6'3" got great speed. He can get down the field. He could be a Deuce Robinson, really. To be honest with you, what I saw Deuce's role on this team, that long seam or something like that, he could be that guy for you. And again, I wish him the luck. I wish running backs and receivers, but USC's never had trouble getting skill guys. Let's put it that way.
No, not at all. Quentin Joyner was the biggest surprise to me. He was the starter coming in. Like, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was NIL. I don't know if he didn't like it. Quentin Joyner leaving, I will tell you this. I thought Quentin Joyner had a chance to put his jersey in the Raptors next to Caleb. I thought he had that potential, and we saw it, and I thought they would be able to do it. I just don't understand why that guy left. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I hope it wasn't NIL. And the problem is, if it is NIL, you are creating a bad environment, right? Because when you go to the NFL, you're stuck for those years. You can't just be like, I don't like it here, I'm going to go get more money. Like, we're creating bad habits. So hopefully it wasn't NIL, but Quentin Joyner leaving, that one was the biggest shock to me.
Well, I mean, his dad was not, clearly he's very vocal on Twitter. His dad was not happy with the amount of carries he was getting. And quite frankly, he was right. Quentin should have gotten a lot more carries. I've been high on him since he was recruited at USC. He's that true home run threat. He's that guy that could take it the distance. I said on my show last night, he's an ankle breaker, right? He has the moves to be an ankle. He's a tackle breaker. You can't arm tackle him in the hole. And he's an angle breaker. He's got that speed that he can go. He can go the distance. So he has it all as a running back. And he also shows some nice hands. In the last game, I think he had like a one-handed catch, which was, it shows that he can catch the ball and get upfield. I think he had one, if any, maybe one tackled behind the line of scrimmage once. And believe me, there was contact behind the line of scrimmage many times. But it was only one time he actually got tackled.
Gentlemen.
What's up, man?
You guys are tough to find, Coach. You're not picking up your phone tonight, man.
I was just about to text you and say, well, let's record after this.
Let's record. All right, here we go. Tim, how are we doing?
Well, I text Jamal, and he doesn't even text me back. So at least, Coach, at least you get a text back.
No, my bad, man. You and I have been playing some phone tag.
Yeah.
I was legit.
Coach, man, what's going on, dude? Yesterday, a little MIA in action, and then today we pop up on the chat here. Coach is as erratic as SC's transfer portal.
Man, Matt, man, you're giving me a hard one. I had a sick kid yesterday.
I know, brother. I know.
We're talking about Quentin Joyner. You joined in at the right time. Quentin Joyner joined into the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, it's Joyner and now it's Deuce, right? So it's a lot going on, obviously, with this team. Look, I think it's kind of an interesting situation right now, and I think the question to sort of pose is, what is Jakeem Stewart doing more harm than good? And the reason I say that is, we understand USC's NIL situation. It's getting better. It's improving. It's top 15. But there is a finite amount of resources. And obviously, we understand that Jakeem Stewart reportedly is going to be making $2 million a year. Hassan Longstreet is going to be making top dollar as well. Unlike in Oregon, unlike a Texas, unlike in Ohio State, where you can sort of dole out $2 million a pop for 10, 12, 14, 16 players, SC can only do that for 2 or 3 players. And I think that there's sort of a corporate America type of situation happening where when you're at a company and you're at a job and someone else gets promoted, it's a zero-sum game, right? Where it's like, well, that promotion, now that's one less promotion for me. And I think in the case of Joyner and in the case of Deuce, I think them seeing where the money is going and understanding that they can't really compete with that, and that the finite amount of resources are going elsewhere, I think becomes very challenging at that point. And now I think they're sort of deciding, well, if we go to the open market, we're going to sort of get an opportunity to get more. I think this is a purely sort of financial play. I understand it in the case of Deuce. With Joyner, it feels a little short-sighted because this guy was going to be unquestionably running back one. I think of any position on the field, both sides, maybe outside of Elijah Page at left tackle, the most confident starter for USC in 2025 was going to be Joyner. So it seems like he's giving up some short-term, gains for perhaps maybe a longer-term play. But on the flip side, when you're a running back and in the NFL, your shelf life is only going to be 3 to 5 years unless you're a true outlier, you sort of have to go follow the money. So it's very interesting right now what's taking place, but you have to wonder with some of the more mid-tier NIL teams, is it worth putting all of your money in 2 or 3 5-stars, or would you rather spread it around more with 4-stars and 3-star players and sort of build a holistic roster, build more depth, rather than putting all your chips maybe into 2 or 3 guys? Because at the end of the day, you need 22 guys.
So you're not buying the $18 million. You think that the USC is more towards the middle of the pack than, I mean, I'm not saying that they are the Ohio State's putting 20 million plus in, but you think that they're more towards the middle of the pack when it comes to NIL, Jamal?
I think it's top 15, Tim. I don't know if it's, but again, you got to understand, like, in many ways, the high school rankings, the recruiting rankings, were an unofficial ranking for NIL, right? I mean, SC sort of finished 13th in their recruiting class. That's about where we think they are in NIL, right? It's 13, 15, 17. It's almost a proxy for that. Here's the problem, right? If you're top 15 in NIL, but it's only a 12-team playoff, right? Like, you sort of are mid-tier. We're sort of in a very interesting world in college football where before, when it was just the BCS, before when it was just a 14 playoff, the types of bowls mattered. the tiers of bowls mattered. There was more of a gradient, there was more of a scale of the type of season you had. Now we're in a very interesting place where it's playoff or bust. And so, like, the difference, is there really a difference between going 9-3 and 6-6 in today's day and age? I don't know. I don't think so. And so, if you're 5 million and you're going 5-7, 6-6, or you're 18 million and you're going 8-4, 9-3, I mean, does that ROI even close, right? Where you're like, the marginal value that I'm getting out of an extra $10 million is still not getting me to the playoff. The equivalent is kind of like saying, when you're shopping for cars, right? Where it's, the Cals, the Stanfords, the UCLAs, the Northwesterns, when it comes to sort of football, they're like the Kia Sportage, for instance, right? I mean, it's a $50,000 car. SC is probably a Toyota Highlander right now. It's a $100,000 car. But then there's the Oregons and the Texases and the Ohio States. They're a G-Wagon, and that's a $200,000 car. But when you sort of take a step back, if you're trying to buy a car, you're saying, well, is the extra $50,000 really worth it for a Toyota Highlander, right? I mean, what am I gaining with that extra $50,000? I'm not in the G-Wagon game. And so could I use that $50,000 for something else, in terms of sort of my life? And so when you look at it kind of from a donor perspective and a booster perspective, they're kind of like, well, for us to really get to where we need to get to, we got to be at that 50 million number, 50 million number. Is 18 even going to do it? And so you wonder at this point, how they're also thinking moving forward. But long story short, Tim, I do think it's sort of a very binary. You're either one of those top 10 teams or you're not. And the way we've structured college football now is you're either a playoff team or you're not. So it's very binary. I don't know if the difference between an Alamo Bowl and a Las Vegas Bowl and, a Citrus Bowl, I don't know if that differentiation matters anymore. And so if you're 5-7, you're 9-3, I don't know if that matters anymore. It
doesn't. Look at Auburn. Like, Auburn's recruiting way up there. Michigan, top 10. Those are two programs that. But then I think there is also the tier thing when you talk about the NIL towards the top 2 or 3, 4, 5 in the top, and then the rest, it drops off pretty fast. But it's also the same thing with the talent these guys have as far as on the field. It looks like, it seems like it's getting really consolidated. But what I like about this season is the NIL is going to open that up. It is going to open it up, and you can get those, like you said, maybe a different strategy, go for those 4-star guys. And it is hard to keep those. When you bring in two freshmen that are making more than your entire probably offensive line combined coming in, it's kind of hard to keep that morale up. So yeah, I get it. And with Quentin Joyner, the thing about Quentin Joyner that really stings, like you brought it, is this guy excited me as much as anyone since Ronald Jones. He's that kind of running back again who could take it the distance on any snap, and it's something we haven't really had in a while consistently with a back like that.
I will say this: I don't think it has much. How can I say this? The portal. I don't think the portal has much to do. It has to do with the NIL, but I don't think it has much to do with the NIL. The Georgia has as many players in the portal right now as we have, and they're in the first round bye, right? And they're considered one of the top NIL schools. Oregon has 2 players in the portal right now. We have 3 guys that matter to us, right? Like Texas A&M has a bunch of guys in the portal right now. They're a big money school. It gets to the fine line where which part of it is money and which part of it is playing time. You get what I'm saying? Like, what part of it is like, well, I'm a freshman, I didn't get to play this year because there's 3 seniors in front of me that all have 1,000 yards. I'm gonna go somewhere else and not wait my time out. Or what part does it become, well, they didn't give me the money I asked for, so I'm gonna go get some more money. I think we're basing too much of the portal on NIL when you have teams that are 10-win teams and are getting first-round buys and are in the playoff who have the same issue with the portal. I think the portal is just completely out of control right now, and it needs to get to a point to where it's regulated. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I mean, it's where is the line set? Is it playing time or is it money? I think so many people are basing it off of, well, we don't have any money, we can't play this guy, so he left. But then Texas A&M doesn't have that problem. Georgia doesn't have that problem. Oregon doesn't have that problem, but they're also getting guys that are entering the portal too. So where is this? Where is this line at? Where which one is it really? You know what I mean? You guys understand where I'm coming from, or did I just talk?
There's always, but if you look at the portal guys, right? A lot of them are process guys, and I think Coach, you and I talked about off the air is the fact that this is a thing in the midseason, and now you're going to see it. This is going to hurt a lot of college. I mean, the days of really 4-year educations and stuff. This is going to hurt a lot of guys entering the portal who aren't going to be picked up by anybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. You threw the numbers out there. There aren't that many roster spots with all the new guys coming in, these recruiting classes coming in. This is your old fashioned, now it's just gonna be a rollover. Hey, we think you maybe should probably look somewhere else because we got this and that. It's kids are gonna be processed out. And so I worry about the student athletes. What I worry about.
What do you think, man?
I mean, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think playing time is highly correlated to money, right? I mean, you're not going to get paid for sitting on the bench. You might get away with that over a season because of what you did previously. But again, that's directly correlated to how you played in some situation before. So playing time is directly correlated to the amount of money. And so if you're sitting on the bench, maybe you're collecting a check for a year based on what you did before, but there's no guarantee that that amount of money is going to get re-upped year over year. So you have to find the situation where you're going to play and you're going to sort of make money. And I think in the case of Deuce and Joyner, both of those guys were going to play. I mean, Deuce and Lemon were probably Maeva's two key targets moving forward, especially when you look at Maeva's skill set and his playing style. A lot of deep balls, a lot of 50-50 balls. We started seeing Lemon and Deuce really separate. I'll be honest with you, Lane, Branch, and Hudson were the three guys I was worried about. Because Hudson doesn't have a big catch radius. He's not a 50-50 guy. It's a different style of play, and he went into the portal. Branch, again, is more of a gadget guy. He's an All-American through special teams. Lemon took his spot with special teams. He's, again, not a big catch radius guy. So I'm still worried about Branch a little bit. And then the third guy was Lane, because even though he was bigger, and to our point, he was sort of my favorite of this group, he was sort of getting a little bit niched up as just kind of the red zone guy. And Coach, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Are you going to be able to make it to the league being a 3-catch for 30-yard guy every game, even if that is with a touchdown? So those were the three guys I was most worried about going into 2025. And I thought some subset of those three were going to explore their options elsewhere. But Deuce felt so solidified as either 1A or 1B with Lemon. And then Joyner felt even more solidified as RB1. Yeah. So this is not just about playing time. This is about playing time and money. And I think that's really where you have to sort of take a step back. Look, Tim, to sort of your point, 15 to 18 million, it's a healthy amount, but how many guys are on a roster? You got, 85 guys on a roster, 50, 40 of those guys are getting paid a lot of money. I mean, it's sort of simple math, right? I mean, if you're paying 40, 45 guys serious money, and you have 15 million, that's 300,000 a player, right? And so now if you're paying Jakeem 2 and you're paying Longstreet 1.5, and I'm just picking a number for Longstreet, Jakeem now you're saying is he's the equivalent of 7 players, and Longstreet is the equivalent of 5 players. And so obviously you're going to sort of get squeezed somewhere else. And in the case of a Deuce, he showed enough on film. Can you imagine Deuce at Ohio State with all those guys that they had and and Heartline, and he would get the playing time and the money and the platform? Can you imagine Joyner in a run-friendly kind of zone scheme offense? So I think they're looking at the opportunity and saying, hey, we've got so much upside. Why can't we get it all? And at SC, we can maybe get 1 or 2 things. We can't get it all.
But Deuce has to be – see, that's the problem with Deuce. Deuce doesn't participate in spring practice. Deuce goes and plays baseball, right? So, like, why would I pay you this top dollar and you're not there for spring ball? You get what I'm saying? Like, I understand you want this money. I get that. But it showed this season that he didn't get better until the end of the season because he finally got the reps that he would have got in spring ball. Like, he was missing all of spring ball, and then now he's asking for money. So we're going to go give you $2 million. Here you go, Deuce. Here's your $2 million. but you're not going to be here in the spring. Like, that's not reasonable to me, and that's not financially responsible. You get what I'm saying? Like, you have to.
I mean, I disagree, Coach. I mean, we're in the world of the professionalization of college sports. I mean, you're going to pay LeBron less for sitting out the preseason. You're going to pay Steph Curry less for playing out in the preseason. Spring ball. I mean, that's all preseason practice, all of that. I mean, at the end of the day, he didn't really do a lot in the spring, but you saw him come on the way he did, and produce. So, I mean, if you're going to pay a guy for on-field performance, it's I don't want to quote Allen Iverson here, but are we really talking about practice, Coach? I mean, this is about
I'm
the
really
results.
talking about spring ball. Spring ball matters. Spring ball is not a waste of time. Spring ball is a time where you get better. That's why they have OTAs in the NFL. That's why they have all-season practice that you're required to go to in the NFL. That is the time where you get better. That's the time where you work on your craft, but you're not there. And like, we did see him come on, but we didn't see him come on until after week 5. If he was there for spring ball, there's a possibility that he would have been there all 12 weeks. Like, there's certain things that to me, the way I'm seeing it does matter, but I mean, I'm just not about chasing the bag, but I want to switch it up on you guys. And I mentioned this to you before, Jamal, and I don't know if Tim ever heard this. So I'm just going to use round numbers. What if they eventually just capped NIL? Does it change the transfer portal situation, right? So if you're a freshman, you get 100,000. Sophomore, you get 150. Junior, you get 175. Senior, you get 200,000. Just putting numbers out there. So if I get 100,000 only and we're talking NIL money from the school, we're not talking promos that you get outside of the school. That has nothing to do with it. Just money you get from the school. You can only give freshmen 100,000. If I enter the transfer portal, right? So say I leave the transfer portal, I'm still a freshman. The next school I go to, I still get that prorated money of $100,000. My money doesn't change. Does that change the whole portal outlook now? Do kids leave now that the money is capped on each level?
Well, how are they going to cap it, though? I mean, the reason why we have NIL is because you can't make somebody's income illegal, unless there's some kind of, I guess I'm not the lawyer guy for any of this. I don't know how the NFL does it. Obviously, the NFL has the models. You have collective bargaining agreement. You have a players union. I don't know how that all works with the owners. I don't know how you can cap somebody's income, but they do. But I mean, until they do, even with this whole, everyone thought that when they have the profit sharing, that was good. That was going to change things, right? That's not going to change anything. You're still going to have the teams that have the collectives that have the ability to do that with with NIL. Can they do this clearinghouse idea they have, Jamal? Because that's what I mean. That would be the thing. If you actually have to earn this, I think one of the parts that hurt USC wasn't the amount of money they were giving guys, but USC was actually making guys go out and earn their NIL, where other programs that, let's say, were maybe pushing the boundaries of the rules a little bit more were able to say, hey, why did you go to SC and have to go to like 200 events? Come here, sign a couple autographs, and we'll give you your 400,000. That hurt USC as much as anything else. But USC is going to be in a situation where they I thought this year, and they did better, you guys. They had to go spend that money. Jamal, getting back to what you said earlier, they had to spend that money because at some point USC had to stand up and win. And although Stewart was expensive, they stood up to Ohio State and they stood up to Oregon and said, you know what, we're going to get these. Yeah, we'll overpay for them, but we're going to overpay this time, not you guys, and we're going to get our guy. I like your point about the locker room, but you do have to overpay, and USC, I think, does have the money. So I don't know, Coach, if you're going to be able to limit that NIL. I don't think it's legal to do that unless you get something in place collectively that allows them to do that.
Well, they did it in the NFL with the Jamarcus Russell thing. He got paid all that money, and then they came up with a CBA, and players are talking about they want to be unionized. Well, guess what comes with a union? A CBA. Guess what comes with a CBA? A whole bunch of rules that these college presidents are going to want. So you can eventually cap it at what you want to do, or set a maximum amount that you could get between that thing. But my whole thing is just prorate the money. I feel like if you start prorating the money, I think the transfer portal slows down a whole bunch. I could be wrong, but that's just my hypothesis to it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what both of you guys are saying. It's unprecedented. To cap an uncapped sport has never happened, right? I mean, you try and put a cap on baseball. That's sort of the equivalent here, right?
No, Shohei.
So we can come up with things sort of in theory. I think it's a really good point that you guys are making, but you can't cap sort of once Jack's out of the box, you can't put Jack back in the box. And so this is sort of the reality that we're in, barring. Now, the thing that you can do is you can come up with some sort of contractual agreements, at least, and say, look, this is a 4-year, $10 million NIL deal. Let's take Michigan and Underwood, for instance, 4 years at 10 or 11, whatever that final number ended up being. But you say, look, I mean, we have your rights now, so you can't just go in and hop in the portal and whatnot. The problem right now is there's really no even sort of contractual mechanism where a kid can go make money in one particular year and then hop and keep hopping. So you don't even have their rights per se. So it's actually even further behind. It's all kind of the worst things about college and the worst things about pro sports put together is the situation that we're in. And Tim, I completely agree with you on the Jakeem Stewart play. You have to do it. You have to show that you can stand up. But the challenge is there any room in the messy middle? Like, if you're not going to be at $50 million a year in NIL, is 18 the same as 5? Like, take baseball, for instance. If you're not the Dodgers and you're not the Yankees and you're not the Mets and you're not the Red Sox, is it even worth playing? I mean, there's really no difference between the Oakland A's and the Baltimore Orioles, and so we're saying, hey, we're the Baltimore Orioles. We'll outbid every 5th or 6th guy that one of the big guns is going to pay for. But is that going to be enough? Is that going to be enough to truly contend year over year for national championships? I mean, that's the expectation at USC. Coach, you always sort of give the analogy in years past. I mean, you can beat Penn State and go sort of 10-2, 10-3 every year, win all the games you're supposed to, lose all the big games. But I mean, is that what USC will become moving forward, where it's sort of a fringe playoff team every other year, every third year, and it's incapable of really winning the big game because the roster is different? So I think we're in an interesting position where, is there room in the messy middle? Like, if you're not all in, I mean, is it sort of worth playing? And I think that's what's really going to be interesting to unfold. You have the schools that have already sort of said, we're kind of out. And then you've got the schools that are completely in, both feet in the pool, all chips in, and SC's kind of in the middle. And I think over the next year or 2 years, we're going to sort of find out whether there's room in the middle in this particular situation.
I listened to your guy on the radio today, the crosstown basketball coach, and he was talking about how it used to be based off of relationships, but now it's all contractual, right? And so, and at this point, I'm agreeing with you on this. It's so messy that these kids want to be paid to play, but they don't want to be treated like professionals. You get what I'm saying? Like, at the next level, you're getting paid to play, but you're on a contract and you have to perform. And if you don't perform, you're fired. You know what I mean? Like, and I just looked it up. It was like 9%. That's another number I looked up. 9% of the people who play Division I football go on to the NFL. Just off the numbers I looked at, it was like 3,000. It's like 18,000 kids. It's like 9%. 9% make it. So what's going to happen to the kids that don't make it? They go to a job. They go work for a job. They go work there for 6 months. They say, hey, I need a raise. That manager tells them, you're not ready yet, but keep down the path, you'll get a raise. They're going to go bounce to another job, try to get a raise. That's what is being taught here, and it's not a true life lesson. And I know everybody gets mad at me. Compared to the past, you had to deal with adversity. You had to ask yourself, do I want to transfer and sit out and burn a year, or am I just going to work this through and eventually end up on the field? If not, at least I get a degree out of it, and you work your way through. Now we're just taking a shortcut, and it's not preparing the vast majority of these kids for what's really going to happen in the real world. And that's what I'm worried about. Like, you won't be able to ask for more money when you get a job. You're going to have to fight it out. You're going to have to grind it out. That's how the world works. But they're creating such a messy. Mark Emmert did handle this thing so wrong, and everybody could blame us because we're the first one to pass the bill. But Mark Emmert was like, well, California's doing it, Texas is doing it, Florida's doing it. You know what? All you guys are able to do it. And he was like, there's no rules to it. He just created a Wild West instead of saying, look, we really need to sit back and look at this thing and say, how can we implement this and control it instead of knee-jerking it? And now that he knee-jerked it, like you said, it's going to be hard to put a cap on this thing. It's going to be hard. The toothpaste is already out of the tube, and there's no way we could put it back in. But we have to find some way to at least cut it in the middle and scrape some toothpaste off the counter, put it back in the tube, and just shoot it that way. It won't be nice, but we have to figure this out because it's only going to get worse. The more money that's get put into this thing, the worse it's going to get if there's no control over it.
I mean, that's the problem. We're all looking for the solution. I have no argument with what you're saying. It's complete. It's transactional. It's not relationship anymore.
Yeah.
And
let's take a call.
And that's this football's going the way of the NFL, and they want the NFL junior. They might ruin college football.
Let's take a call. Brian, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's good, guys? Fight on.
Fight on,
man.
Fight on. What you got for us?
So the whole thing with Joyner and Deuce, I believe both of them were going to get playing time, especially Joyner. The thing about it, I do believe, is the NIL. You have to identify your premium positions of need. And I said this on other platforms. Right now, wide receiver and running back, you can get those out of the portal. And Lincoln Riley has hit, knock on wood, the last 3 years on his running back, one with Travis Dye, one with Lloyd and with Woody Marks. Now, can you justify giving Joyner more touches than Marks? I don't think you could have. But let's just say, all of the touches that Marks didn't get, we gave it to Joyner. Well, guess who's not touching the ball? Those two are the only two that's touching it, the receivers. Now you got an issue to where, hey, look, all of your receivers are unhappy. Somebody's going to be unhappy. So in a situation like this, you can't get emotionally tied to, one or two players, because at any given time they can walk without any type of contracts in place, that's tied to this NIL to say that, hey, look, you got to stay at least 3 seasons or at least 2 seasons, then they're going to walk. Now, what are our premium positions of need? It's the defense. It's the defensive line. It's the linebackers. It's boundary corners, and it's the O-line. So can you justify giving, a kid like, Stewart that type of money? We don't know yet because we haven't seen him on the field. But what you can justify is saying that, hey, look, he's a premium position of need. Now, with what's the kid named Sam Green? We need, rush ends, but does he fit, the mold that, that Lincoln Riley and Lynn is building? No, he's undersized. Now, who are your defensive ends? You got your Braden Shelby, he's 6'4", 6'5". You got your Cam Fountain, he's 6'4", 6'5". You got your Stewart, he's 6'6". You understand? You got your Lucas, he's about 6'4", 6'5". You got size. And
don't forget Gus Cordova. Don't leave him out.
Yeah, don't leave out Big Gus.
Right. So he's building a Big Ten team. Riley is building a Big Ten team. We could not compete. Now, if we were still in the Pac-12, I more than likely believe that he would have done everything he could have to keep Deuce, to keep Ware, to keep Joyner. But if you want a Big Ten team, they know they have no more than 1 or 2 star receivers, 2 at the most. We got 4. So you got to trim the fat some. So who can we do without? And I agree with Coach when he said, well, hey, look, Deuce plays baseball in the spring. Well, hey, the process of elimination, he has to go. So if I got to choose 2 receivers out of the 4 that we got, I'm going with Lemon and I'm going with Lane. Lane for the red zone, and Lemon is the stretch of field. He's a remarkable player. And Lemon can do what Branch could do. He could kick off, he could do punt return, and he's a hell of a receiver. So if I'm trimming the fat, I'm cutting costs. Again, those are not premium positions of need. So I only need 2 in the Big Ten. In the Pac-12, I needed about 4 to 8. You understand? Brian, you get where I'm going now?
Brian, I do, but is there nothing more Big Ten than having Quentin Joyner as your running back? Because I'm telling you, because that guy doesn't go down. That guy doesn't go down on contact, and he can grind you out those 4 or 5 yards.
Here's the thing: we got one behind him that's a freshman, and he's requiring less money. If I'm looking at showing up my defense, I need every available penny I got to pay. What's the kid that's coming in on visit? A Silver. Is that the one coming in on visit? You got another end that's coming from Elon that has a bunch of tackles. You need some linebackers. I got every available penny I got going to that side of the ball. Why?
Okay.
Because Notre Dame rushed for 200 and some odd yards on us.
But that's what Lincoln Riley said, Brian. Brian, that's what Lincoln said. If you take him on his word, he said, this team going forward, all about it. I'm going to make sure that the defense is taken care of first.
Right.
And he has shown a lot of that, but you can't go 100 on defense. I get you, and you're right. You can't give up that many yards on running the ball.
Right.
I get that.
I believe that you got to put it all. I believe that you got to stack up your defense because running backs. Of course
you do, but you got to do both. Of course you do. You got to do both.
But here's the thing: running backs are not a premium position of need. We got a Brian Jackson that's a freshman, that's serviceable. He's hitting the portal, and we can get him for cheaper. Again, if you remove your emotions from it, and you think like a Bill Belichick at New England, they never played a bunch of running backs or a bunch of receivers. They had one or two good ones. If you look throughout the Big Ten itself, you don't see a whole bunch of receivers on one team that are stud receivers like that. You see one or two. So if I'm building a Big Ten team, I'm starting with the defensive trenches and I'm starting with the offensive line. That's what I'm starting with.
Well, but you're going to the NFL, Brian. I'm going to stay here in college football. You got Iowa State. Iowa State wants to win national championships. You know what they do? They go out and they pay top dollar and get a Quinshon Judkins to go along with their Travion Henderson, 2 NFL running backs. And I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying about the receiver thing. Spot on. I'm with you.
Right.
But you need quality. I mean, you need that running back. And yes, they've been lucky with the running back position without a doubt. But they haven't Ohio State goes out and gets a Quinshon Judkins. Why? Because they know in the Big Ten, you need to run and you need depth and quality running backs. Right. I like Brian Jackson, who you brought up, but he hasn't shown yet. He hasn't had a chance to show yet. But I don't think he's ever going to have the speed, the breakaway speed, the game changer. What this team has been missing really is that game changer on offense. They really don't have that guy. And the closest thing to that we had this year, I think, was having Quentin Joyner back there. So
here's the thing, though. We said it earlier. You touched on it earlier. SC is not playing with the same checkbook as an Oregon or Ohio State. They're not playing with the same funds or the same resources. So can you do without Joyner? Yeah, if you can get a serviceable back that could back up Jackson and you can go on 14, 15 play drives, you can.
I disagree with you on that one, Brian. I disagree with you on that one. You can't. It's going to be hard to find a Joyner in the transfer portal without spending a lot of money. You gotta realize that Quentin Joyner not only runs the ball hard, it's just the fact that you could also use Quentin Joyner in the screen game. Quentin Joyner is a true 4-down back, and you could use him in all 4 downs in every situation. He's fast enough to run the outside zone. He's also powerful enough, and he breaks enough tackles to where you can run trap and power plays. But then he's also good enough, and he's elusive enough to where you could use him in the screen game. You're not going to find another back like that in the portal. We don't have another back like that in our depth. If we look at what is the biggest hit in the transfer portal, we will have to say it's Quentin Joyner. Quentin Joyner was the biggest hit that we lost on this roster right now. And the difference between the NFL, like you're saying, and college football is the NFL has 53 people and they only suit up 46, right? So their depth isn't great. In college, you legit need depth. You see the drop off in depth in the NFL when their backups come in, like the backup quarterback, for example. Let's look at Georgia. Georgia, that gunner guy is a legit quarterback. He's going to be good. There was a drop off because of Carson Beck, but I think that was reps and experience. But there was no talent drop off. SC has no depth, and there's so much drop off in talent when their win goes down. Notre Dame game was the first time that we did not see a drop off in talent when Winnie Marks went down and Quentin Joyner came in. Actually, to me, in my opinion, I thought we saw escalation in talent because of so much that we could do with Quentin Joyner. We can't lose a guy like that, and it's going to cost a lot of money to replace him.
So,
Coach,
Brian, let me jump in here real quick.
How much more? Hold on, let me ask Coach real quick. How much more of a change did you see from Joyner to Marks? Because I think that Marks was the best offensive player that we had all season.
The change was that you have to look at it from Woody Marks is a senior and Quentin Jr. redshirt freshman, and Quentin Jr. and Woody Marks are on the same level right now. How much better is Woody Marks going to be the next year, right? So that's what we saw. We're going to see a bunch of growth wherever he goes. This guy's going to be a good guy. So, Madman, go ahead real quick. Let Madman go.
Yeah, no, Brian, I want to answer your question because I'm not sure it's been answered yet, because I think you brought up a really good point about when funds are limited, right? You got to go to the position of need. And to your point, you got to prioritize offensive and defensive line because those are harder positions to acquire. It's more premium cost. And running backs, particularly in California, wide receivers, particularly in California, are more of a commodity position, is what you're saying, which I completely agree with. Here's the challenge, Brian, I think that we're facing. Look at USC's offensive line going into 2025. Down Monheim, down Pregnon, down Mason Murphy. Now, Murphy had a very up and down season, but Monheim and Pregnon were two of the most consistent offensive linemen. You're down three starters. So now if you just sort of establish, hey, we want to prioritize offensive line, you have to put in now for three starters, right? Money for three starters to be able to sort of justify that. Do you have the money to do that? Or do you have the money to maybe go get one quality starter and some rotational pieces, in which case you probably still need a running back that has the ability to break tackles and be very effective and be very explosive with an average to a below average offensive line. And so that's where, it becomes a very delicate dance, right? That's where it becomes a very delicate dance. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Brian, I completely agree with you, but we're also sort of operating under the assumption that Lincoln Riley's in total control of these decisions. I think a lot of these decisions are happening sort of outside of his control because players are looking at the open market. Look, the Jakeem Stewart sort of changed a lot of the narrative of the perception of USC's recruiting class. I mean, just think about 30 minutes before Jakeem Stewart said, I'm coming to USC. What would you have graded this incoming recruiting class? It was probably a C-. I mean, we struck out on Ingram. We struck out on Madden Faramo. We struck out on a lot of defensive players, to your point about the depth. So right now, the question is, yes, you want to prioritize that depth, but if you don't, we're so far off in terms of depth, the amount of money it's going to take to get that depth means, that may be money we don't have. So we may have to get some pieces on the line to fill some holes, but then you also need some really credible, skilled people to overcome the deficiencies of the line. You sometimes have to do it in parallel until you finally get to a place where you have enough in a particular year, and then the depth brings you over the top.
Before Brian answers this question real quick, one thing we have to realize is that if you don't think we have the money to compete with the teams you guys are talking about, then I'm sorry, guys. What are we talking about? I mean, why even have this card? If we're gonna start from the point that, hey, come on, we're SC, we're never gonna be able to compete with Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas. We just don't have the money to do it. If that's a conversation we're gonna have, then you guys, let's start enjoying bowl games because we're not gonna be going to any playoffs. I'm going from the point where we aren't at that top echelon, and there's people saying, defense win championships. Well, last time I checked, defense doesn't score the points, and the team with the most points wins the game. So you do need both. You can't be all in on the defense. There are serious issues with the defense. There's also serious issues on the offensive line. And unless those offensive line situations aren't fixed, and I haven't seen that Mayava can make the intermediate passes yet that he's going to need to make without a strong run game. This team's going to need to rely heavily and lean heavily on the run game in order to be successful. Because I don't care how good your defense is, if they're on the field most of the time, your offense is going 3 and out. I don't care if you have, the 85 Bears out there. Those guys are going to get tired, and it doesn't matter how good your defense is if your offense can't move the ball.
Go ahead, Brian. Get your last comment in.
All right, cool. Here's my perspective on that. In this situation, we have to solve for X. X is what? The amount of money that you got to play with, right? So we don't know how much it costs us to bring over Woody Marks or Marshawn Law. I don't know if we were even doing the thing when Marshawn Law was playing. One thing we can be certain of is Riley hasn't missed on the portal when it comes to running back. Now, whether or not he's going to have to get one at a premium cost, which I don't think he will. I think it would be more so around what maybe a little more than what Jordan was making this year. Then you focus along, like I said, along the offensive line. We've proven that once we made the quarterback change, that we can put up points. Outside of the rivalry game with UCLA, Riley got above or right at the 30-point mark. And with some more experience from Mayava playing in this system, I think we can get right, back to where Riley was, used to averaging points per game. So that's just my conjecture. I appreciate you guys having me on, but we would have to solve for X in this situation, in which we don't know what X is.
Good deal, Brian.
And Brian, you're right. But my point is, I don't want to start with our premise, you guys, that we don't have the money. Because if we don't have the money, Jamal, to compete with those teams, why are we talking about competing with those teams? Because like Coach, like you said, or no, sorry, Jamal, you said that top 15 is the de facto, who has the money. And if USC is never going to be in that top 10, we're never going to be. So why are we even have this? We just get used to going to bowl games.
Yeah, Tim. I mean, I don't know if I would make it so reductionist. I mean, I think it's top 15. There's a level here between where USC is and where Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, etc. is right now. There is a gap. I don't think there's any sort of question about that. But that's also why sort of strategy comes in. Like, why are you paying $10 million a year for a coach? Okay, because to your point, Tim, if it's just about paying the players, I'll go get a $1 million coach, a $2 million. Because if it's that simple, where it's just, I need to get the best roster and strategy has become commoditized, then guess what? To your point, SC may have the money, but they're just spending it in all the wrong places. Why not have a $3 million coach instead of a $10 million coach? And why not sort of not have a capital campaign for the best locker rooms and put all that money into players, right? So I don't know if I would go that far, if it's that reductionist, where it's just about having the most money and the most money means winning the championships. Fine, that's a point of view, but then Lincoln Riley should be fired tomorrow.
I agree.
We know Coach wants to fire Riley. He wanted to fire Riley yesterday. But the thing is, you can't. The NIL has to pay for your players. The athletic department can't. And the athletic department is what's paying for Lincoln Riley. And thank you, Big Ten. You're at the Big Ten conference. You're paying for Lincoln Riley. I don't think we ever go for Lincoln Riley if we're making the pittance they were giving us when we were in the Pac-12. There's obviously going to be a strategy to this. And I'm not being flippant about it. I'm glad that they're going for defense first, but they got it. Both sides of the line need to be fixed. Both trenches need to be fixed. The reason why this USC offense has looked like crap the last 2 years is because the offensive line, that's no secret. And those guys cost money. Brian brought up corners. They cost money. Rush ends, guys, they're going to rush. Those guys, look at the NFL. We're the most expensive position salary-wise. And that's the same thing, because there's only a certain amount of guys in the world that have those skill sets that are elite. And so that's why those things are commodities on teams. They're more rare than the other. Why is it harder to get a tackle than a guard? It's going to cost more money. And I don't think that USC can get away with concentrating on just forgetting about the offense. And Quentin Joyner was not going to be asking for it. People are saying, I think like 500,000, whatever. They could have negotiated with him. I think whatever it was, I think it was, by the way, the whole Quentin Joyner conversation, a lot of it is coming out that might be off the field issues as well. That it's not just about money. It's not just about playing time. There's a lot goes into all of these decisions. But to say that we're not going to miss that dude and he would not be a priority for next year, I'm telling you, I thought we were going to lean on him heavily next year. And that's why I was okay with maybe having Mayava work through whatever he is working through, as far as that pre-snap read, going through his progressions, where he seems like he's been a bit limited in his 3 games here at USC.
Well, when you really look at it, though, and you kind of scroll through the playoffs, only one of the teams that has a bye. Well, Georgia's a big spender, but Boise and Arizona State's not a big spender, right? So you have to figure out where in the point, and I'm gonna go into coach talk here, so I might sound crazy, but you have to figure out where in the point does it become culture and teaching these guys and making these guys play for you and win, and where does it come to the point to where it's like, all right, we have to pay for guys and make it work. Because if we use the Ohio State example, it really didn't work. They got to the playoff. They barely squeaked in. They didn't really make the Big Ten championship. They were supposed to go undefeated. It's supposed to be them in Oregon, right? Put all this cash in. But then you look at a school like Arizona State, who knows where their NIL is, but you got guys that are just playing for you. So where at the point do you draw the line and tell yourself like, all right, I understand this is what I need to do to play in today's game, but also how much of the value of coaching still falls in, right? Boise State beat the number one team in the nation by 4 points. I mean, their NIL is probably better than most at their level because of the Albertsons money and the bowl game that they get and everything. But like, you can't tell me that they're competing with Oregon and NIL wise. That's culture and coaching, right? So how much of that matters? Where do you draw the line and say, all right, I still need to establish a culture? And then you have to say, when do I start paying guys and just buying guys to win championships? Because at some point it's going to backfire. And if you ask me, Ohio State was a backfire, right? It didn't really work out the way it was supposed to work out. It's working, but we don't know the end result yet. But it didn't work out the way it worked out. But then you look at Oregon like, oh shit, well, Oregon worked, right? You kind of look at Texas like, it's about there, but how much more do you put in it? And do you just forget culture altogether and just say, we're going to pay for play, we're going to become the Yankees of the 90s, we're going to become the Dodgers, and we're just going to buy championships? At what is that where the game is at now, or do you still need culture in your locker room and able to be able to build a successful roster? You guys got anything on that one? Madman, you're pondering. Go ahead, Madman. I see you pondering.
No, I'll let him go first.
Okay.
Well, you do need, you need the culture. You have to have one heartbeat, right? Like I love Coach O had that whole one heartbeat thing. You need that culture, and you definitely don't want guys pulling in different directions. A team has to be a team. But Boise State, ASU, I love Kenny Dillingham, by the way. I think he's just an amazing coach. Coaching does matter. But playing in the Big 12, man, it's not the same thing as playing in the other conferences. I think they got Oregon pretty early, Coach, when Oregon was kind of, God, it hurts me. Oh, God, it hurts me to say it. I can't give Oregon a compliment. They were before they really got stuff together. They got their O-line together. There were injuries. There was stuff going on with the offense. You still had Dylan Gabriel figuring things out early on. But I tell you what, if they played them today, it wouldn't be close. You do need those guys. But yes, coaching absolutely matters. And I'm just really kind of mystified where a lot of people just jumped completely off the Riley bandwagon. I'm not off the Riley bandwagon yet. There's huge concerns and huge worries about the decisions he's made. But the man is a good coach. He's proved you can't win the way he did. Even in the old Big 12, which I think wasn't as watered down as his current Big 12, to be that dominant, you can't be just an okay coach. Is he elite? Now there's question marks. I mean, that's a different story. But to say that, to reduce him to being like just a guy, I think is also a bit early to do that. I think that you're seeing a team and a fan base that got really excited about. We had a good offensive line in 2022, without a doubt, and we had the line, and we had the offense, and we had the players, even that horrible defense. But we've watched 2 years of this offensive line just basically put an anchor around the neck of this offense. I mean, when have you ever seen USC or even Lincoln Riley going back to Oklahoma be this anemic on offense? And when was the last time either one of you guys saw USC have back-to-back years with offensive line that bad? Even under Clay Helton. Do you know what I mean? Towards the end of Clay Helton's run, I think we're seeing an anomaly. I think that maybe there was a rudderless ship for a while. We know this program was run completely in the ground 6 years of Clay Helton, and it's going to take more than a couple of years to get out. I think it was a mirage. I think the ball bounced USC's way in 2022. It was a good team, but people don't realize that either it was behind the ball on NIL, and they're just finally figuring out what all these other programs were pushing the rules on NIL. USC was playing it to the letter of the law. They were doing the old-fashioned way, being safe. They weren't. You go to extremes of like a Tennessee who basically was going to get sanctioned and say, "No, screw you. We'll take you to court. I know we broke your rules, but try to beat us in court and we'll win." Then you had the USCs and kind of like the Michigans when it came to recruiting. They were very strict on how they had NIL policy, and they fell even farther behind. This is the first year where USC has taken both of their hands. They're not fighting with one hand behind their back, and they're fighting in the NIL space. Jamal, you might know more than me about how much money they have. I do believe they have a fair amount of money, but the thing that really is good for USC is the fact that USC now is using that money, and they're not waiting until guys get on. Remember, you guys, they're waiting to get us on campus before they even gave them their contracts. All the other schools were giving it right away. The way they distribute it, I talked earlier about how you had to go like 200 to get your 200,000. You have to go to like 200 different events. So USC wasn't playing the same game all these schools were playing. USC's catching up. That's a shame. It seems like they're always catching up. The last place they're catching up is how they're distributing it and how they're negotiating. You got Division Street up there at Oregon doing it on a corporate level. And then you got, I don't know, whatever we're doing here at USC is clearly not working. So it's not how much money, it's how you use your money. And it is definitely about coaching, but I'm not selling out. This defensive staff we have, find me a better defensive staff in the country, because the coaching is here.
I'll tell you the issue I have with Lincoln Riley.
Coach,
Go ahead,
okay. Yeah, I mean, Coach, I think the question that you had was, how much is it about coaching and culture and how much is it about cash, right? It's kind of it's sort of the 3 C's almost. It's coaching, culture, and cash, right? And I think when you look at who are the programs that have been really successful the last couple of years in this NIL era, been Georgia, been Texas, been Oregon. What's the common denominator with their coach, right? I mean, you got Kirby Smart, you got Dan Lanning, and you got Sark. All 3 of those guys are really good X's and O's guys, but they're also really charismatic, and they have a lot of passion for what they do. And I think you have to be able to have both in today's day and age. You need the left brain and the right brain. You need to be able to do the X's and O's and crunch the numbers from a financial perspective, but you also have to galvanize young people from 18 to 22, but you also got to galvanize donors and to get them to believe in your vision and how you see the future. And so I think that's where the true coaching now comes in. It's more than just being great in terms of X's and O's. Now you have to be more of a CEO, if you will. You got to sort of get in the weeds in terms of strategy, but you got to sort of operate finances, and you got to be a leader of men. And I think moving forward, the big question is, yes, Tim, I agree with you. I think there's enough money there to be dangerous. Are we completely in the top 10? No. Does it mean we can't get there? Absolutely not. We certainly can. This is still USC. This is still a blue blood program when it comes to football, and a very reputable private school in the entire world. So the resources are there. But the question moving forward here is, does Lincoln Riley have all of the attributes to be a successful coach in a post-NIL era? And I think that's the question that needs to sort of reveal itself from a programmatic standpoint. Because, Tim, I agree with you that there's been some missteps. But on the other side, there has never been an easier time than now in college football to win quickly. When you talk about the transfer portal and you talk about, look, since 2000, and Coach, you and I have talked about this, since 2000, 16 different coaches, 16 different coach team combinations have won the national title since 2016. 12 won inside of 4 years. Okay. So the idea that, oh man, this is a 7, 8, 9, 10-year rebuild, the data just doesn't show that. It's just not true. This is a very easy time to be able to win if you know what you're doing. And so that's why year 4 for Lincoln Riley is a make it or break it. Guys, I'm going to give you a stat here. Let's see how the bowl game shakes out. God forbid USC loses the bowl game to Texas A&M. Lincoln Riley's record is going to be 25-15 through 40 games. Everyone likes to compare it to the Clay Helton first 40 games. I'm going to give you the comp that I believe. Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin went 28-15 with scholarship reductions, with a bowl ban, and with Pat Hayden as his athletic director. and he got tarmacked. Lincoln Riley would be 25-15 with $10 million a year, a more favorable transfer portal situation, and the declaration that this was going to be the mecca of college football, and it was going to be the mecca of college football in a very short period of time. So the fact that he could be so bold in December of 2021, January of 2022, and now all of these sort of excuses and dynamics are sort of coming into play, it's one of only two things. A, he wasn't being truthful and didn't have complete information back then, which is sort of a sign of irresponsibility and immaturity that I don't know if we want in a head coach. Or B, he just thought this was going to be a lot easier because he had the job gift wrapped at Oklahoma by Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops gave him his first 3 recruiting classes. And now when it's time to sort of actually build a program, all of a sudden the challenges are coming. So it's TBD. Look, I've always maintained that he gets until year 4 to be able to make a decision on his future vitality. But the one thing I will say is at $10 million a year, if this team does not make the college football playoff next year, I don't can see in any sort of objective measure anyone say that A, it's been a successful 4 years, and B, it isn't justifiable that USC needs to move on in terms of their head coach.
I will say this. And I mentioned this before in the past. Lincoln Riley's problem is that he's never been fired before, and he needs to be fired. And if you go back and look at every great coach on any level, if you look at Nick Saban's been fired. Pete Carroll's been fired. Kirby Smart, unfortunately, hasn't been fired, but he happened to come from a good tree. Sarkisian's been fired. Lane Kiffin's been fired. When you get fired, you kind of have that burn in you. You kind of have that, what did I do? What did I do wrong? What did I do right? How can I make this better? How can I get to a better place? And you find a way to make yourself a better person, and then you try not to get fired again, even though the saying in the profession is you get hired to get fired. Eventually, everybody gets fired. Bill Belichick got fired. Pete Carroll got fired. They get fired again, right? But Lincoln Riley's never have experienced that before, and everything has come easy to him, like you said, Jamal. And now he's like, well, this is a little bit harder than I think. He's not necessarily – I'm not taking anything away from his scheming. I'm not taking anything away from his coaching. I'm not taking away anything from what he can do as far as playbook. But organizationally, he was not the guy for the job. Organizationally, we really needed somebody who has been fired before, understands a rebuild, and will be able to put this thing in the right situation. And that for that, he was not the guy because everything has been given to him. This was not a job to be handed over. This was a job that required work, and I don't think he was ready to work this hard in this situation.
I mean, I don't know. Hold on. So this is something I've always heard, especially from Oklahoma people, that Lincoln Riley was handed the situation at Oklahoma. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And that he won with Bob Stoops guys. Right? Did Bob Stoops? So how many national championships did Bob Stoops win? One. In that, were those John Blake's players, Jamal? Because I mean, it wasn't his recruiting class that brought those guys in. Was it John Blake that did that for him?
Yeah, Tim. The only difference there, I'll just say, is Bob Stoops inherited a team that went 5-6, and by year 2 he was 13-0 international champion. Lincoln Riley inherited sort of a perennial power in OU, and let's not forget, all 3 of Lincoln Riley's college football playoff appearances were his first 3 years on the job. And so everyone talks about the 3 CFP appearances. It was his first 3 years on the job. And then his last 2 years, he didn't make the CFP. And now the 3 years at USC, he hasn't made the CFP. So I agree with you, Tim, but the trend is going in the wrong direction in his career. Okay. Right. We can't sort of deny that. He made 3 CFPs and it's fallen off. And oh, by the way, the wins trend is going in the wrong direction at USC.
Hang on, Jamal.
I mean, it went from 11
let me finish what I was saying.
7. So I mean, the whole principle of sort of improvement is your win total is supposed to go up every year, right? I mean, not go down.
What was Oklahoma's record the year that Lincoln Riley came to Oklahoma?
Let's look it up.
They were 10-2, right?
No. when he came as an offensive coordinator and turned that freaking program around. They were 7-5. I'll save you guys time. They were 7-5. Okay. That program was going in the wrong direction. There's a reason why Bob Stoops, one thing about Bob that is he loves Oklahoma. And he knew they were going to lose Lincoln Riley. It's not like Lincoln Riley fooled anybody or strong-armed his way in. Stoops knew that they were going to lose Lincoln Riley, and he kind of stepped aside. And Lincoln Riley took that program. Look at the players. If we want to give Bob Stoops credit for all that, we can if we want. But before Riley got there, they were not trending in an upward trajectory. He came in there and breathed a lot of life into that program. And if you remember why, the big reason why he left, sure, people want to say he was afraid of going to the SEC. But what people said close to the program, this is the Oklahoma guy close to the program was talking about, said Lincoln Riley was constantly getting slow played. He wanted better facilities. He wanted a better staff. He wanted more money for recruiting staff. And Oklahoma wasn't giving that to him. So a lot of times we talk about, we want to compare our program to that program. Look at that. They're winning all these games. Well, what does that program have that your program doesn't have? And so Lincoln Riley is trying. Lincoln Riley bringing over Alex Grinch, huge mistake. Hanging on to Alex Grinch, huge mistake, right? We know that. And that's really what set the whole program back big time. But you know what also set it back? You brought up earlier how Lane Kiffin's. Who did he follow? Pete Carroll was winning. They had that bad last year after the sanctions were hanging over the program for a long time. But did you remember the roster that he inherited? And back then it was coming. The recruiting was off the chains. There was no NIL. It was about all the years that you had Pete Carroll killing it. All those kids grew up watching and wanting to wear number 5. And so he came out and he recruited like a madman during those first couple of years. And they had look at those rosters that he had. Look at the lines he had. Did either one, did Helton or did Sark or did Kiffin inherit an offensive line room like Lincoln Riley did? Yes, they had all those seniors, which that year they were great. But as soon as those guys went, there was nobody behind them. So I'm not here to apologize for Riley. Riley's made a ton of mistakes. He made a ton of mistakes this year as well. There are serious question marks about where this USC program is going. But there's a lot of shade thrown at Lincoln Riley, and I think it's kind of not looking at the whole picture. Lincoln Riley, again, didn't inherit much at Oklahoma.
Well, let me put it. Okay, I understand what you're saying, Tim, and I get you. He came in, but let's put it like this, and we could follow Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's an excellent example. Lane Kiffin, for the longest time, was given the title. He's not a head coach. He's not a head coach. He's a better coordinator. He's a better coordinator. He's a better coordinator. People are starting to say that about Lincoln Riley. He might not be a head coach, but he might be an excellent coordinator. And all I'm saying is, I'm not taking anything away from what he's doing with the playbook. What he does with his playbook and his mind and all that is great. But I think organizational wise, I don't think that he is prepared. He was not prepared for this situation as an organization. And the reason why I say that, he came in at 7-5, but he was the offensive coordinator. Bob Stoops still ran the organization, right? When they were winning, when they turned it around and started winning again, Bob Stoops still ran that organization. When Lincoln Riley was headed over the organization, it was in a good place, right? He came to SC, and that organization was not in a good place, and he was not ready. He's not ready to rebuild the organization to where it needs to be a perennial blue blood like it used to be. That's all I'm saying. I'm not taking anything away from.
You know what he inherited, Coach? He inherited Mike Stoops as his defensive coordinator. That probably cost them. It might have cost them, a national championship.
That's true, and he had to fire him. I'm with you on that, but they still had a winning record.
Well, I mean, 7-5, yeah. Hey,
they went 7-5 that year.
I appreciate the argument, but I think there's a parallel here, right? Is saying that Lincoln Riley sort of saved Bob Stoops, and it really is Lincoln Riley and it wasn't Bob Stoops. That's like the equivalent of saying Lane Kiffin saved Nick Saban.
No. I didn't say he saved him.
Both of those guys.
I don't think I said he saved him, though. I said I was countering the point where you guys made that he walked into some great situation. I don't think I said Bob Stoops is a great coach. I mean, I made the crack about the one national championship. Bob Stoops is a great coach, but there's a ton of Sooners, by the way. I'm looking in your chat. There's a ton of Sooners over there.
The Sooners
and I'll tell you this: if they were honest with themselves before Lincoln Riley got there, they had serious doubts about where the program is going. Come on, you would have to, right? And so my point was that he didn't say Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops is a great coach. I'm saying that the picture you guys are painting is that he's never had to earn something. He walked into it. I disagree. I think he, along with Bob Stoops and along with, a great program like Oklahoma, we can build something like that, a blue blood. It came together and he built that and he carried it on and they did very well for a while. But this is a new age. You do need to support. Recruiting has changed during that time period. Money, facilities changed. And he wasn't getting that. And that's why he left Oklahoma. And maybe that's why they were going down.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, I think that's fair. But I think we're also giving Lincoln Riley a little too much credit for the turnaround at OU. I mean, Bob Stoops still was, to your point, national champion, multiple-time national finalist. And before the 8-5 season that you reference, he had 4 straight 10-win seasons, and he had 8 of the last 10 were 10-plus wins. So they had one bad year, and I think Stoops realized, look, I want to fix this immediately because I see kind of a changing of the guard, and he was very proactive in getting Lincoln Riley. And to Lincoln Riley's credit, he did a phenomenal job, much in the same way Saban identified, look, I'm great. I'm a great defensive coach. I'm a 3-time national champion. The sport is getting more offensive. I need to now get an offensive coordinator. Even if a guy like Kiffin and Sark is going to personally drive me freaking insane, I need to have the self-awareness that they're going to sort of compliment me in a significant way. So all successes around, but I think to Coach's point, I think it's a really good one. There's a difference between coming into a structure where a culture has been established, where a leader has been established, and you come in to sort of play a role versus now you're the CEO. Now everything sort of goes to you. And I think the point here is, does he have the skill set to do it? And so far, the first 3 years, the evidence has suggested he does not. Now, we're not going to sort of jump the gun and say he can't do it. That's why he's got year 4 to be able to prove it. But we are, Tim, also starting to run out of excuses. Year 1, it was Grinch. Then it was the trenches. Then it was NIL. Then it was the portal. We're starting to sort of run out of excuses with Lincoln Riley here.
Are there any illegitimate
you sort of have
reasons
to look in the mirror and say, is it me?
The things you just rattled off, let's put it this way. Okay, so it's the coaching, right? Let's play a little game then. Let's put Lincoln Riley and this staff up at Oregon. Or better yet, let's give USC, I don't know, Phil Knight. So I mean, we all want to compare ourselves to other programs, but you don't want to look you don't want to look behind the curtain at what's happening at USC.
Yeah, but
it's not all Lincoln Riley. Everyone wants it, just like the quarterback situation. You all want to replace the quarterback; it'll fix everything. You want to replace the coach, and then USC will be fine. I think you guys got to look deeper than that. You have to look at how dysfunctional, really, USC behind Lincoln Riley has been run. As far as they've botched the NIL situation, that's clear as day. And we started the first half hour of the show talking about it's all about NIL. Well, if we botched the NIL for the first 3 years, we're trying to play catch up against the Ohio States and the Oregons of the world. Are we talking about both sides of our mouths and we're blaming Lincoln Riley for that? That's what I'm curious about. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
I can agree with you on that. I on that part, I can agree with you on that part, saying the front office, which is the president, the AD, all the support staff, they did drop the ball on that. They did not. They did drop the ball, and I'm always the one that says they took away so much stuff that mattered, and they need to bring those things back that matter, like the bell on third down, the white shoestrings, like just so many small, like to get rid of the DJ at the home games. We don't want the DJ at the home games. Like that's not what USC football is. Like there are some traditions that matter, and I think they're just going so far away from SC, and we're losing SC. And I agree with you. They didn't handle NIL right. They botched this. They botched that. They didn't handle a lot of things right. I get that. But here's one thing I will say. Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher did have Oregon's money, and Jimbo Fisher was not able to get it done. So there are things and like you said, if Lincoln Riley goes to Oregon, is he good? I don't know, but I don't think he's able to.
You don't know?
No, I don't, because I don't think he's able to handle the personalities. I don't think he's able to handle the locker room. We're starting to get more reports that people aren't happy in the locker room again. This is year 2. Like
there's always unhappy families. There's always the guys that don't play. Well, hey, the guys that aren't getting a lot of reps are unhappy, coach. Is that new to Lincoln? Is that a Lincoln Riley problem?
But the question is, are you able to control it? Right? The question is, how much is coming out of your locker room? Those are the things that really matter. Are you able to get a team to police themselves? Are you able to keep the unhappy guys, even though they're unhappy? And I understand they're unhappy, they're not getting more reps, but are they still team guys? Are they still there for the program? Hey, you're not playing this year, but hey, I'm still a Trojan. We're still doing good. And those types of things. So that's the stuff that worries me about Lincoln Riley. Like, and that's what I mean by organizational. Like, and don't get me wrong, playbook, you're right. He'll put up 1,000 points in Oregon if he had those players, 100%. But when it comes down to the culture and organizationalship of being a head coach at Oregon, I think he will lose it. And I mean, if that's the case, like Jimbo Fisher would be in the college football playoff for Texas A&M right now. You know what I mean? He's in the same situation.
Tim, the one thing I'll just say is better. The one thing I'll say is I think you and I are sort of in violent agreement, actually. I think we're just sort of saying it from a different point of view. We have to understand it comes back to what is the role of a head coach in today's day and age. And I think it's a disservice to say we have to fix the NIL and then everything's going to be fine with Lincoln Riley. I completely disagree with that. It's Lincoln Riley's job to fix the NIL. That's part of the job of being a CEO. So we can't just say NIL is separate from the job description. Okay? Because if we're saying NIL is separate from the job description, then guess what? We have just described an offensive coordinator. We have not described a head coach. So I think we're all in violent agreement that Lincoln Riley is the quarterback guru, the quarterback whisperer, a genius offensive mind. We have said that repeatedly, exclusively, emphatically. The question is he head coaching material in this day and age? And that still remains to be seen.
Let's take a call. Let's ease this a little bit. Let's take a call. Look who we got here. Nico, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Now it's famous people. Now it's famous people are coming.
Christian, I'll get to you next. Christian. I didn't forget about you. Nico, how you doing, man?
Good. How about you guys? It's been a while. I think it was preseason last time I was on.
Yeah. Good to see you, man. Hope all is well.
What you got for us, Nico?
I was just listening to you guys talk about Lincoln Riley. Kind of caught the tail end of that, but pretty much agree with everything that I heard from Jamal on it.
Everybody agrees with Jamal. Nobody agrees with me. I'm the one they love to hate, and they hate to love Jamal. Good deal, but
not at all.
How have you been, Nico? What's your recap on the season? How do you feel about the season and everything?
Disappointed. I mean, I honestly, I got a group chat with some guys. I'm severely disappointed. It's between the NIL stuff going on in the backstage to performance on the field to rumors you're hearing during the season to even benching Miller Moss. I mean, it was just to how simplistic the offense was run the entire season. I was wondering when the tricks are going to be pulled, and and it wasn't pulled. It just everything was just confusing. The entire season was confusing to me.
Got you. You guys got anything for Nico? Long time friend. If you guys don't follow Nico on Twitter/X, go follow Nico on Twitter/X. This is a true fan, man. He was on our show this spring. We're gonna have you back on this.
We're gonna have you back, Nico. Great to see you. You know,
yeah. You guys have a good one.
Yeah, thanks, Nico.
Bye.
Christian, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? And
what do you got for us, Christian?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I hate to rewind to kind of go back before the Riley talk, but when my man B Jenkins was on, and I understand what he was saying as far as they're trying to build offensive line, defensive line, not defense, but offensive line, the trenches, right? Because that's where we're weak. But this is not me saying I agree with their decision to let Joyner go, or I disagree. But what I'm saying is, as a college football player, right, me being one, I'm just throwing this out there. It's possible that these players, coach, as you know, at the end of the year, you have a meeting with your position coach. They bring you in with the head coach after that. You have your one-on-one, and they tell you this is where we see your future here, either good or bad. You know what your role is. They think you're gonna have next year, how much you develop. I know during the season, Riley was saying when he was asked by the press, why is Jordan not? What can Jordan do to see the field more or get more carry? What he said was hold on to the ball and develop more as a pass rusher. And I know we've been talking about NIL and saying we don't have top NIL. And could it be that this is not a money situation, but as far as the future of the program and the coaching staff, what they're trying to do, they're saying we it's not that we don't have the money to give you. We don't feel that your play and where we see your future here is warrant that amount. You know, that's the first thing. Because I have been in those meetings where, hey, good year. This is your role going forward. We see you doing this. And I also been in a meeting where it was a possibility that they wasn't going to bring me back the next year after my freshman year. But then I had a great spring, you know. But this is before NIL and portal, so you couldn't just hop in there, and that all changed. But I say that because if you look at the top teams that's in the playoffs right now, everyone outside of Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana, really outside of Indiana. Indiana is the only team that flipped their entire roster, right? When they brought the new coach from James Madison. Ohio State plugged in place, key positions. Even Oregon, they went and got a receiver here, a quarterback here, a defensive player. They didn't flip the whole team. But if you look at Georgia, Penn State, Boise, Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, SMU, player retention is important for the culture because if you look at their key position, their offensive line, defensive line, other players, they have 3 and 2 year starters. We're saying, look at Boise and Arizona State, they're junior and senior oriented, people who have been in that system and who have played together. And my biggest fear, and I'm worried about next season, is because the amount of seniors we're losing on defense, the amount of people we losing in the portal, we gonna have a completely different team. And when I look at this season, at the beginning of the season, we were losing a lot of one possession close games by mistakes. And my thing for next year, I was building on my optimism was this is gonna make us better. We're learning how to win. We got to the end of the year, we start winning the closer games and not losing them. But now with the whole roster being flipped, we lose that. We lose that experience. We lose those tough lessons that we learned this year. It's like the whole season is all for naught. And my biggest worry about saying we're going to go into the portal and rebuild the defensive line, offensive line, and let current players go who had those tough lessons. If we look at last year, the effort didn't fail, the execution failed. Because last year in the portal, what we were saying, we got to get trenches. We got to get some offensive line. We got to get some defensive line. And we weren't able to get what we need. We were getting outbidded by everyone else. People was coming, they'll leave us, go somewhere else and commit. So that is my biggest fear is going next year is that player retention is important. That's why Ryan Day goes to Ohio State and says, I need 13, 18 million extra just to keep my current roster, just to 20 million, just to keep those people intact, right? Because you have to build on something. I'm not saying keep everyone, but all the lessons that we learned on field and the experience that we gained this year, it's all for naught. Mostly all those players are going to be gone.
I 100% agree with you. And you said besides Indiana, who flipped the roster, if you technically look at it, Indiana didn't flip their roster. All he did was bring a bunch of players from James Madison over to Indiana, and that's why that team is good because they already understood the playbook and everything like that. I actually want to tell you something. So I coached college at the D2 level, and we had a coach who separated the money per position because at the D2 level, it's not full scholarships, it's partial scholarships. And he separated the money per position, and he put all the money up front. And we had decent up front, but all the other positions never mattered. Our quarterback was bad. Our DBs couldn't cover water if they fell in the lake. Like it was all bad. And we finally had to sit back and say, we can't put all the money up front. We have to just go through the pot and then we have to pay each other separately. So that's why I'm kind of with you, Christian, disagreement. Like, we just got to pay the trenches. You can't do that. It does no good to pay the defensive line and the offensive line, and your corners aren't any good, or your quarterback's not good, or your running back's not good. You have to disperse the money wisely, right, in order to get the right players at the right spot. And it also has to be a fit. I don't care how long we go into this NIL thing and how far you make it, and how much you talk about the time is changing. It has to be a fit. If they don't fit in your program, it will not work. And if you don't believe me, look at the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers does not fit in that organization. It is not working. They're trying to do everything to make it work, and it does not work. That is called dysfunction. They are 100% dysfunctional, and there's nothing you could do to fix that. Jamal, Tim, you guys got anything?
Tim, I'll defer to you.
No, I mean, I think you guys are both on it. Great breakdown, Christian. I totally agree with 99% of what you said. The one thing that I just keep trying to go back to when it comes to roster building, and if you had talked to me a year ago and all about the defense, I never thought we'd see an offense at my big thing. This is a little bit off topic. I always thought that Lincoln Riley would have a dude at quarterback. Okay, and it's not disparaging anybody we have in our quarterback room, but it just seems like when he's going after some guys in high school, it just seems like he's missed out. He goes after Raiola, and he just doesn't get him. I mean, it was an uphill battle for that.
That was a good miss.
Well, yeah, it turns out to be. Well, see, now I'm beginning to wonder, has he lost his fastball? Because look at the dudes he's going after, right? But where he did get it right was Lagway. He won Lagway. Can you guys imagine this team this year, even with that offensive line? Talk about a mitigator, Lagway, but he missed on Lagway as well. He ended up getting Longstreet, who I'm really excited about. Again, watching him play this year, I've seen like 2 or 3 of his games, one in person. I love that kid. But he went after Julian Lewis and hung with that for a long time. I wonder how much that hurt the overall class doing that. It just seems like he's missing those things because the offense, you guys, what's the old saying? The best defense is a good offense. USC never once this season did what I thought they'd do in the Big Ten. What has USC and Pac-12 schools always done to the Big Ten? Jump all over them offensively, get them out of their ground and pound game, and make them play our ball. USC, because of its trenches, weren't able to do that. And USC has to get, I said my favorite spots are tackles going forward so they can figure this out so you get running depth, offensive tackle, defensive tackles. USC is not going to, I don't care how good our defense is, we're going to struggle on offense. If from what we're seeing right now, who we have right now on looking at the entire team, I'm not as excited about the offensive line as I used to be. I think we're going to be really good, but not that great. And I just think unless we get a difference maker that can really run the ball next season, if we rely on our passing game to win next year with this offensive line, it's going to be a long season. And the reason why I said no is he worth 500,000? Probably not. But 250, 300 in that range, I just to let him get away.
I think the priority is not entire defense, but the priority, if you have 1 and 2, they're attacking the offense and defensive line. That's their top 2.
But you lose your whole secondary too. That's the scary part.
That's what I'm saying. There's a more to cover. Like there's a lot of secondary to cover. There's a bunch to cover. Hey, Christian,
but I think 1 and 2 is the. I'm gonna say one more thing. I'm gonna get off so y'all can get more. The priority is the offensive defensive line, and then they're working their way back on defense. That's what I think. But I'm gonna get off here to this one last thing, because I agree with you, Tim. I agree with Jamal and Coach. I'm in the middle of what I'm agreeing with on both sides. I agree. I'm not off of Riley yet. Next year, if it's the same, then you'll start hearing me say that it's time to move on. But what I think is the biggest flaw, and when it comes down to NIL, and it's not on the field of coaching, but it's the management of the overall program and the roster. Because if I'm steady losing recruits due to NIL as a coach, I'm shaking some bushes, right? I'm going to NIL. I'm doing the Ryan Day, the Georgia coach, Texas A&M. I'm getting some people's faces, and I'm shaking some bushes to get this thing changed. And where I agree with Jamal, with Coach and Jamal is that Lincoln Riley is a young coach who never had to build a program, and he's in the process of just like players developing. He's developing as a head coach. But as USC fans, we don't have time. We don't want time for development. We're paying you this much money. We expected you to come now and win. We don't want to be part of the development. So we're getting the impatient with him. Yes, he inherited a bad team, a bad roster. That's why we had, we didn't even have what, two seniors on offensive line. One was a transfer in, right? Because Helton left him with nothing, right? As far as that, but that's where we're at. But as part of being the head coach and overall management is looking at this and saying we got this much money in NIL. I'm going to spend money here or there, but I'm going to recruit, or I'm going to bring in 3 and 4 stars here that fits my system that I can coach up to cover us on the back end. And it's kind of like an NFL roster. They have a cap. Every team has the same amount that they can spend. So when they go in there, they're saying, okay, this is what we want to pay top dollar for, but we can go and plug and place this person and pay him a little more that fits the salary but fits the scheme, and it can make it work.
Yeah,
that's a
no,
good
Christian,
point.
we'll sort of close with this. First, number one,
Thanks,
the
Christian.
way you sort of managed the conversation. Christian could run for politics, number one, and I love that. Number two, Christian, thank you so much for all the support. You've always been on so many of our shows, Tim's show, our show, and so forth. So we're very grateful for it. But I think the one thing we can agree with Christian on, I think that we can with the vast majority of the audience, is there's kind of holes everywhere on this roster. And at some point, you have to establish an identity. Like, is this team going to be built from the inside out? Is this team going to be more offensive? Is this team going to be more defensive? Is this team going to be disciplined in certain areas and explosive in others? I think that's what everybody is really hungry for. And I think the point of view of building the team inside out is very, very correct. But I think to all of our points, you have to sort of get all the way to the out. It can't just be built on the inside exclusively. But that's really what we're hungry for. It's identity. And right now there's just a lack thereof, because I think we can pick any position group. Tim, to your point, secondary, linebackers, the defensive front, O-line, receivers now, running back now, even quarterback. There's questions at every position. So what are we prioritizing? What are the philosophical pillars? What's the identity?
I like linebacker. I think I'll stop. I think we need to add some depth, but I like young Stevens, man. That guy, and getting Eric Gentry back. The question mark I think you're probably alluding to is the fact that can we keep Eric healthy for a whole season? That's always been an issue. But I guess my point I like that Christian brought up was the 4-year thing. I think even the most ardent people that want this to work and realize that quite frankly, guys, we'll all be out after next year. I mean, I was even talking to Gabe this week about, heck, I might be out after this, in the spring and in the fall, after spring, when you go into summertime. If we don't fill some of these rosters, because it's in that, where I pull short though is to blame it all on Lincoln Riley, because the world does. This is not a lab table, right? The world's not a lab table. We are not building this team in a petri dish. But a lot of the controlled stuff that we have, it's not the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Look at where some of these programs started with when Dan Lanning showed up. Look at what they had in the cupboard when he showed up. Look at the support he gets. Look at what Ryan Day had in the cabinet when he showed up. Look at the amount of money he gets worth from the entire state of Ohio. If we're going to compare it, we're going to call what he did right and what he did wrong. Here's the thing. I don't hear anybody talking about this defensive staff. Like, we're dumping on Riley. He kept Grinch. Absolutely. That's a huge stain. Who knows if that might just be the one pin that he never got back around from. But there's a lot going, and I will say it. The issue with this team, and I said all last year, is the roster. And at some point, like Jamal said, very good point, at some point you got to look at the head coach. And if the head coach isn't making huge strides, you fix the coaching staff, great. But even with that, we're losing to the Marylands, we're losing to the Minnesotas, we're losing to teams we should not be losing to. And they don't have more NIL than us. They don't have better recruiting staffs than we do. And we have a hell of a larger coaching salary than they do.
I know somebody who might have a good opinion on all this. You know who that might be? Our man USC Jay. What up, Jay?
There's another celebrity in the house. I mean, Coach is just picking the celebrities tonight. I mean,
man, how you doing? Hey, I was listening. I got to get off, but I totally agree with Jamal. Everything falls on Lincoln Riley and even the roster. I mean, you had opportunities to, and I'm big on Lincoln Riley, and don't get it wrong. After next year, If he doesn't get it right, he's out. But you had opportunities, even with getting Jordan Addison and other guys, in the fold, wide receivers. This year, you go get Jaden Richardson, you go get Jay Fair, you go get all of these guys. We stockpiling talent. Well, we could have utilized those resources and put them in other areas such as the defense because you're so focused on the offensive side of the ball. And it's like this has kind of been a trend. It was the same way with Jordan Addison. And all of it falls on Lincoln Riley, even with the GM. You connected to him, brought him from Mississippi State. You guys, the Mike Leach, the whole thing. I just think it all falls under him, and we got to hold him accountable at some point. I've been one of the biggest Lincoln Riley protectors for a long time, but it's getting to the point, especially when I talk to guys that I have relationships with, player-wise, and I'm hearing these stories, and it's the same story year after year, and that's what makes it so bad. It's not like it's a one-time deal, and to let a guy like Quentin Joyner go, I brought this up several times. You recruit your roster first. Recruit your roster, and you work it from the inside out, opposed to the outside in. And it seems like it's kind of going in reverse mode right now. And you can ask SMU first year, and now they're already in the ACC conference. And you telling me that they go to the playoffs? You telling me that Arizona State goes to the playoffs? But it's no way nobody can make me believe that Arizona State has a better team than USC. We saw the games that we could have won. We could have established the run. We could have kept running the ball. But you do the same thing last year when Marshawn Lloyd was on the field when we played against Utah. But so we got to hold him accountable at some point. And I know I tried to touch on a couple of things, but I got limited time. But it's now to the point to where it's frustrating. I protected him for a long time. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that he has to look at himself. And here's another thing. I'm starting to wonder in my own self, in my own mind, when I look at all the quarterbacks, whether it's Kyler Murray, whether it's Baker Mayfield, whether it's Jalen Hurts, all of those guys, it almost looks like, and I hate to say it like this, it almost looks like he doesn't know how to coach without having a high caliber quarterback like that. That's what it looks like to me. And I'm not saying that's the case, but with Miller Moss and Jaden Alvin, we know that they're not on the same level as a Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, and maybe even Spencer Rattler for that point. But it just kind of looks like, he doesn't know how to operate without that. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Jay, I have to ask you an important question, Jay. And Jamal wants to know this too. How many points did you put up on Sunday?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Jay,
we have to know, Jay.
Question. Oh my God! This is sort of the mind reader.
How many points did you put up on Sunday?
On Sunday, you confused me. I don't understand that question.
Your church league, Jay. Your basketball.
Yeah, man. I wanted a 5x5 game, Jay.
Oh man,
I wanted the 5x5 game. Did you deliver for me?
No. I played like 4 games, man. We played half court, but I scored. I think the first game like 8 points, and the second game maybe like 12. Then the other game I was lost in the South, man. Maybe 3 or 4 points. I didn't do anything.
Hey, yeah. Jay. I want to say this. I'm happy. We were always in disagreement about the Miller Moss thing, and now you're coming to my side about the Lincoln Riley thing, Jay. I love to see it, Jay. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, you put the situation has pushed me to a place where like, okay, I was squeezed this way, like it to the point to where I was constantly protecting the whole situation with Lincoln Riley. But now I'm to the point to where like, okay, I got to put the point the finger. And then when I listen to Matt Ince, the first day of his press conference at Fresno State, it's almost like he took a shot at him and said, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the ball, and we're going to run the ball. It just makes me think like, well, I'm not going to go that route, but it's crazy.
Jay, I appreciate you, Jay. Let people know where they could catch you at, man. This is another USC podcast community guy along with Nico. Where can they catch you at, Jay?
Yeah, it's USCJ32 on Instagram and Twitter, and then USCJ Lost to the Sauce podcast. You guys stay blessed, man. I'm out of here.
I appreciate
Have a good
you,
one, Jay. That might be our cue too, Coach. We've been in this has been a heck of a run. And that might be our cue to call it a night as well.
It is. We got a good one in. Hour 40. That's a good one. That's a record. That's a record. That was a good one, man. We put a good one together. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the same thing. No matter what we say, how we say it, where we say it, when we say it, it always goes back to the same thing. The university needs to figure out and needs to fix the culture and needs to put SC back in the same place. I will always tell you this, and I'm gonna use this Jets example for a very long time. If your very front office is dysfunctional, everything else is going to be dysfunctional. And you could tell how lost everybody looks. And now they're trying to be on this mad dash and this mad scramble to try to fix NIL. But at the end of the day, how much are the alumni really willing to help you? And I think it's at a point where the alumni really don't want to help because they don't know what's going to happen. So the plan needs to start from the front. And now I will say this. It's going to get to a scramble again because Fulton is leaving. So now who's going to be the president? Who's going to run it? So it's a lot of things that needs to happen above Lincoln Riley before we even could get it fixed. And unfortunately, Lincoln Riley may end up the sacrificial lamb with the dysfunction in the front office, just like Bobby Saleh. And that's just how it goes. You guys got anything on that? Or y'all ready to check out?
It's been a great
I've
one,
been half
guys.
asleep for the last 40 minutes, so yeah, I'm good to go.
I appreciate you guys, man. We put a good one in the books. I appreciate all you guys for listening, all your comments, everything. I appreciate everybody who came in and called. Yeah, that was fun. We got to do this again, you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Live free. Fight on.